call the roll, please.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Capel.
Here.
Mr. McDade.
Here.
Ms. McNatt.
Here.
Ms. Mumford. Mr. Norton.
Here.
Mr. O'Connell. Ms. Ray.
Here.
And Ms. Stubblefield.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right, and before we get started, I wanted to make a motion from the floor to rearrange the agenda some. I want to move Dr. Elko up. We'll do our approval of the minutes, have Dr. Elko give her presentation on the dune management update. So do that, have citizens' comments, and then do our new business and push unfinished business to the bottom of the agenda. Is Craig Logan here? So I guess he's, okay, so he's out too. So motion to have the dune management plan report after the minutes approval, have citizens' comments, have the new business, and then have the unfinished business. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, great. We do need to approve the minutes from January.
And can I say something about that? Since I forwarded y'all, or sent you the agenda, the minutes, I've added a little bit that I forgot to include. So if you look in your packets, under number 3, the first paragraph with Ben McDonald, who spoke here, this just says that he spoke at that meeting. So what you got emailed did not include that. This version does, and so that's what I'd like you to vote on.
Okay. All right. Motion to approve? Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay? Now I'll do acclamation.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Dr. Elko, you're up to present the 2024 dune management plan report.
And they have a copy, everybody has a copy of that.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Elko. I'm the city's coastal management consultant, and my business, Elko Coastal Consulting, does a lot of the resilience planning for the town. So tonight I'll be telling you a little bit about the dune management plan update. So we did a dune management plan back in 2018, and in November, City Council adopted the dune management plan that's before you. So you have a summary page before you, and then you should have received the full plan electronically. So what I'd like to do is just walk you through kind of some of the goals and recommendations of the plan. Essentially, the plan is, the purpose of it is to keep us current and in compliance with state and federal laws, right? Of course, the purpose is to make our dunes beautiful and provide habitat and protect the city, but those are two things that I think sometimes get lost, that we have to remember that we are mandated to do certain things and develop in a certain way by the state and through our Army Corps of Engineers Beach Nourishment Project with the federal government. So, you'll see in the plan that the plan aims to kind of make a connection between the federal Beach Nourishment Project, which is everything happening out on the public beach, and then the adjacent upland private properties. It acknowledges that the dune system varies significantly along the island, right? On the west end, we have a flourishing dune that hasn't really been severely eroded in a long time, as well as up on the east end, up to about where we've done the new dune restoration project from 8th East up to the washout, and the dunes there look amazing thanks to those new structures. So we talk about that in the plan. And then from the washout east, of course, that's where we haven't really had a history of dunes for several decades, and so that's where a lot of the challenges come into place that we face today. So just a reminder about the Federal Beach Nourishment Project. So as you know, that project began in 1993, and back then, well, first of all, let me say the reason this agreement that I was mentioning that we have with the federal government is called a local cooperation agreement. It's a signed document between the city and the federal government for a 50-year project. And in that agreement, there are several things that we must do to keep getting sand, especially free sand after major storms when we get the emergency funding at 100%. So there's something called an O&M manual, it's our operations and maintenance manual, and that kind of lays out all the things the city is supposed to do. So the dune management plan is very conscientious of that and gives recommendations under each of the goals to remain in compliance with that plan. So then just one more point of reminder is the lines that are out there on the beach and what we're talking about in the plan. You can see on the diagram there with the recommendation for the seawall setback is the PEL is the perpetual easement line. And that line was surveyed along the entire beachfront prior to the federal project in 1993. And it established where the federal government was going to place sand, i.e. the public beach, and where they weren't, i.e. the upland, private property upland. The state came in at the same time and set their baseline at almost the exact same location. There's just a couple of lots where it varies, but essentially that's the line on Folly Beach where everything seaward is public and everything landward or upland is private. So that plays an important role for the city regulations, for the state regulations, and for the federal project. Okay, so I'm kind of stepping through the plan. I don't know if you've printed that out, but I'm moving on to the goals and objectives and recommendations page, and you see a figure in there that looks like this with the 5 goals of engage, monitor, protect, restore, and adapt. I'm on page 13 of the plan.
They don't have
No,
pretty
but we
copies
have
of the whole plan,
Oh,
they have,
We have this.
Okay, that's all right, we can use this.
but that was emailed to you.
Yes, so the goals are on the bottom, going across the bottom of the page, engage, monitor, protect, restore, and adapt. And I'll just talk to you a little bit about each of those. There are very detailed bullet points on the back here for each of those goals as well, and you can follow along with them. So engagement, obviously, this is where we're teaching people about the importance of the dunes, and it includes things like signage, putting flyers in short-term rentals, and signage to protect the dunes is one of the requirements of the federal project. We have to have those out there. We also have a cool recommendation to incentivize compliance with the Dune Management Area Ordinance, so the DMA ordinance, which was adopted in the first round of the Dune Management Plan. And that's to pilot city beach preservation grants. So give funding to private property owners that need to do stuff to maintain that 40 feet of private lands behind the project area. Moving over to monitoring, so you see a list there on the back page that range from hire an engineering firm to conduct 50% post-storm damage assessments. That one's in there because the seawall damage assessments after the storm, if the seawall ordinance passes, it does require things related to 50% or more damage. So if a structure is completely damaged, then it has to come into compliance. And there are various monitoring requirements. Again, monitoring of the beach design, of the height of the dunes, of the width of the beach. This is all also required by the federal project. So we can move on to protection. So that's the bottom left. And one of the images, I guess is not in here, but is in the plan, I apologize, is the figure 7 that's included in the plan, and it's an aerial photograph of Summer Place Lane. So that is that's the seawall that you see in every picture of Folly Beach if you're not from here. Like, it's the classic eroding beach picture that everyone shows. And that's the setback precedent that we used for the 25-foot setback recommendation in there. So again, getting to staying in compliance with the federal project, the O&M manual says that we must prevent unwise future development through an adequate setback of development from the PEO. And this word encroachments appears in this O&M manual 6 times. It is all over the agreement. So and prior to every beach nourishment project, the Corps sends us a letter and lists out these 10 properties are encroaching on the federal project. Going over that line is serious business, and they threaten to not put sand on the beach when we do it. So it's very important. Getting back to the rationale for the 25-foot setback recommendation, so the seawall at Summer Place Lane is setback 25 feet from the PEL, and we have never had a problem there. The riprap is at the recommended slope of 2 to 1, so if you have a 10-foot seawall, then the rule of thumb is that you need 20 feet of horizontal riprap to support that wall to prevent scour. So it works out great, and that's the whole reason for the setback. It's not for any other reason than to not have riprap falling into the federal project. It's to keep development behind the line, right, and to stay in compliance. So we'll move on to restoration, or the restore goal. And here we're talking about planting native vegetation, enhancing the recreational integrity of the project, or balancing. Actually, that second one's really important, balancing the recreational and ecosystem integrity. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is protect private property while maintaining the project, and in the areas that aren't, the rest of the island, this is only like 1.5 miles that we're talking about that are subject to this kind of extreme erosion. So for the other 5 to 6 miles of beachfront, restore dunes, right? Keep a really healthy dune system in there. And again, some more ideas in there with leveraging public projects to educate. So, at the county park, at the pier, at the city walkover areas, we can do a lot of this educational stuff. And like we've done with the rain gardens and the rain barrels at the community center, right? Educate the private beachfront property owners of what a model dune DMA area might look like. And then finally, adapt is the last recommendation of the plan, and this, make sure we keep coming back to it and keep evolving as the times evolve and change. So, in summary, I know you're really interested in the recommendation of the 25-foot setback for the seawall. There is a very important reason for all the recommendations in here, particularly that one where we're in a balancing act with the federal government too, because they don't want us to encroach on the project, but they also don't want us to compromise the integrity of the project, right? So they don't want things collapsing back there, and that's why we passed the DMA the last time we did this plan, was to work with the private property owners to maintain that area behind the line where the city's not really, authorized to spend money. And so it's that balancing act that we have to work on with the federal government of maintaining the area behind the line and not encroaching a single rock out onto the beach where they're going to renourish. I will stop there and see if there are any questions.
Do any of you have any questions for Dr. Elko?
Well, so, like the revetment, like that's been coming onto the beach for a while. Like, it's it definitely happened like this last time, the last renourishment and everything, but even before that, like it was something that has always happened. So what is the, why are, like, I get why we're doing it, and I, understand, I think, but we're doing it now, like why didn't we do this a year ago? If the rocks have always been coming out on the beach.
A year ago, right before the renourishment, the Army Corps came out and marked a bunch of these.
Right.
And the city had to use taxpayer dollars
But even
over
before that,
$12,000.
like, because the revetment's always been there, and it's always, so, it didn't just happen a year ago and then the time before that, so, is it because the storms are bigger and they're, it's more scouring, or, I guess I think it's needed, but, it's, like, why now?
versus
Versus,
Yeah.
like, when you
You know,
did the
and-
dune management plan before,
Sure. And I think all of these, these are planning decisions that, I guess the city, I'm not speaking on their behalf, but in my experience with my clients, they normally don't wanna throw the whole kitchen sink at the community all at once. Like, we know where we need to get, and this is where we need to get, but were we ready to do that with the first dune management plan? Probably not. We had 0-foot setback from the baseline as recently as 2010, and then 2015 things started changing a little bit, and so we've been slowly trying to get to where we need to get. All the while sea level's rising, storms are becoming more intense. So the need and the urgency, it's like, well, when we did the first dune management plan, we talked about a seawall setback, but it wasn't the time. And now that we have the dune management area, people are comfortable, they understand that that's not an area of the beach they should really be developing, is now the time to get us where we need to be for resilience.
right, okay, so it's just like a step in the whole thing of what we're trying to accomplish, really, yeah, okay.
I do have a question too, and this might be a just completely separate topic, but would this ordinance also address any boardwalk that goes out way into the beach? Like after we lost, one storm, a lot of places had, so does that
This
address?
doesn't, but I know, is Eric here? He's not. Isn't there an ordinance for boardwalk retreat that if it's damaged and the dunes don't go out that far, they have to?
The big
Because
storm
the-
last year, they all got rebuilt way out into the beach, and I just didn't know if this dune, as a part of dune management, does any does the boardwalk itself,
I think they got
This
rebuilt to
doesn't-
where they were.
exactly, I
Yeah.
know, and but,
Yeah, this does not address that though.
No.
So the monitoring piece that you'll see at the bottom of monitoring on the back, manage walkovers and access paths. So we keep a very close eye on those. I know if you're not one that's looking at walkovers monthly like we are, it did seem like something crazy happened, but in fact, when the walkovers were rebuilt, they were rebuilt to the ordinance, which says that they have to go out to the toe of the dune and, you know, at the vegetation, so that you're protecting the vegetation and allowing access.
but if the dune
Unfortunately,
was
we had a lot of
destroyed-
erosion after that, and so that's why we have these like dangling walkovers. And then another recommendation under protect is, let's see, under enable dune protection measures, the first one is enforce private walkover requirements. So the plan is definitely speaking to the need to address that concern, and the details there are regulating walkover structures determined at the toe of the dune, adhere to the dune management area, and be consistent with state regulations. So, I think there's as much in there as we can get in there to avoid that.
So that's probably why I asked if it really did address it, that was a separate,
So if council decides to, then,
we could add that.
yeah,
address it
well,
that
or
way.
it could come to us later,
Yeah.
but not tonight.
Yep.
What is the Pilot City Beach Preservation Grants that you touched on under engagement? Like, what's a little, like you said, you know, it was grants that
Yeah.
property owners could apply for, like, what's a little more?
So, the city requires beachfront property owners to maintain the dune management area. So, for example, if it erodes, if we have private property erosion and they lose sand, they lose vegetation, they lose sand fencing, it's on their dime to put all that back. So the idea is to put out a little mini grant program where private property owners could apply for, you know, less than $2,000 is what we suggest, that the city will determine that for those very things: vegetation plantings, walkover repairs, extensions or retreats, adding sand, relocating septic systems, and installing fencing are the things we suggest. So it's a recommendation for the city to look into that, and because incentives are a
Right.
good way to keep that area managed.
Okay. Could it be used for removing the revetment that goes behind?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really foresee the need for that, honestly, in the near future. Those are very well-built structures,
Uh-huh.
and, you know, it's gonna take a massive act of God, a more than Hugo type event to rip those things out, so we're not planning for the worst extreme case scenario here.
How armored is the beach?
Very, very much so. So under monitoring, we actually have cataloged the permanent structures in a DMA as the second recommendation, and maintain a database of unarmored developed beachfront lots. So I don't know the answer to that down to the number, you know, right now, but that is a recommendation to really let us get a handle on that and be able to say, you know, there are 15 unarmored lots left on Folly, but it's a small percentage of the grand total of beachfront properties.
So how will the ones that are not armored fit in with, you know, when they need to be or decide to be, or however that happens? Like, if they're gonna have to be here and the others are,
Yeah.
you know, not in a line, like, it's not a perfect line.
And I don't know where y'all are in terms of introducing language. You do have a draft seawall ordinance.
Yeah, and that is before them.
Okay, yeah, so the two things that you'd want to make sure are in there are sufficient riprap out front to prevent from scour at the base, and then protection from flanking. So that's when you have, like you're describing, Amy, where you have somebody that has a seawall but their neighbor doesn't, right? And there two bad things can happen. One is the neighbor's property can erode, and it could erode so much that a bad thing could happen to the seawall property where the erosion could actually get in behind it. That's called flanking the structure, and that would compromise it. So we have recommending what do they call, return walls on the sides of structures that aren't tying into an adjacent seawall. So the return walls, if there is a seawall there and it's farther seaward, you would just, you know, tie it in at an angle. If there is no seawall, you'd have a wall going back toward the house to protect for that type of a situation.
So it's kind of like,
Exactly.
okay.
And again, there aren't, and you know, we can come back with a number. That's not a hard one to kind of put an intern on, count properties without walls in an aerial, and we can come back to you with that
So should we add that in? Like, is that something that should be, you know, if it's a new, I don't know, I guess this isn't, I don't know if that would need to be added in, like, if it's a new seawall, how do you connect it, or, but, I mean, I guess that would all happen in like permitting and everything.
Well, we have had this conversation, about how to, if it's behind and what angle would you connect it to the
Right,
ones that are
but that's
closer
nothing that needs to be like regulated or anything, because that's all like y'all's job.
Right.
But it might need to be in there
Right.
that there's a requirement, it has to be built, but exactly how or whatnot.
Right, it doesn't
in the
need to
city,
be
right?
that detailed, right,
Right.
right, okay.
Can I ask a question?
No, this is just for her presentation. We're gonna have citizens' comments after this and allow people to speak, but not ask questions. And Nicole's gonna stay, hang around, so for your conversation later about these, she'll be able to answer questions then too.
Yeah, you didn't vote, so I could go home just to get this information out first. Thank you.
Okay,
you.
thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Faulkner. It's a lot of work. All right, so we are moving on to citizens' comments. Did you do like a sign-up sheet, or are we just going?
Mhm.
All right, well, the floor is open for citizen comments.
So this will be citizen, anyone who wants to talk about the seawall setback or the gravel ordinance or affordable housing, now is your time. Each person has 3 minutes to speak, and I'm gonna put a little timer up here. Please state your name and your address for us. Give me,
Speak since I had a question about the thing there. James Lacey, I sent a letter to you guys, I presume you all read it, but, the question that I had with that is who's gonna re-nurse this 25 feet when the time comes? You know, it sounds like a setback, sounds like kind of an innocent proposal, but as a beachfront, I own a property on the beach, but I'm also a resident of Folly. So to me, it means that I've got to continue to pay taxes on it. I've got to continue to be liable for it. I've got to continue to maintain it, clean it up. I can't protect it because I can't put a wall up there. Now, I already have a wall, so I'm not, hopefully, unless we have a 50% deal, which hopefully we want, and we'll probably have bigger issues if that's the case, but, you know, it's a dangerous precedent to me, to require this. You know, who's gonna pay for these seawalls that get connected? You know, if the problem is, and according to city officials, the problem is that, you know, some revetments or rocks or whatever are falling over, then, you know, require people to clean it up. You know, it's not rocket science. We don't need a 25-foot setback to do that. And we all know that at some point down the road, there's gonna be a storm big enough to wash up to the wall. Whether it's 25 feet or whether it's here, it's gonna go up to that wall. And at some point, beach owners are gonna say, well, this is public beach. Not beach owners, big beach users. And so then who's liable? You know, I've got people out there using my 25 feet. Who's liable? You know, is the city gonna be liable? Am I gonna be liable? In which case then, you know, then it goes into eminent domain, which is the way you take private property for public use. Any questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you all. My name's Rob Werman. I'm with the law firm of Duffy & Young, here on behalf of Juanita Wright, John Cantwell, and Juan Enterprises LLC. I know that Mr. Duffy sent in a letter to the city council, but just wanted to be here, and by the way, Ms. Wright and Mr. Cantwell both wanted to be here, but unfortunately, Ms. Wright's fallen ill, so they were not able to, but just wanted to express their deep concern here about the seawall setback ordinance y'all are, you know, having this discussion on. And just to set the stage a little bit, they own 5 lots between 659 and 663 East Ashley Avenue, 3 of those are beachfront and would be obviously affected by this ordinance. You know, they suffered a lot of property damage from a storm back December 2023, and setting off of that, they wanted to put in some seawalls to tie into an existing seawall on an adjacent property, and I think this raises a lot of the issues that have just been discussed. They tried to do this. They at one point got permits. Those permits were ultimately revoked due to what was at the time a new DHEC interpretation. I'm sure y'all might be aware of that, but suffice it to say, there's been hurdles along the way that have drawn this out, where they were trying to put in the same type of seawall that they easily could have put on, and a number of Folly Beach homeowners have put in for years. So in their attempt to do that, they've been sort of waylaid by these various issues, and this is yet another one that's going to basically permanently prevent them from tying into the adjacent seawall, which, you know, we think does a number of things. We don't think it's going to help the beach as much as it would be if they could tie in. And, you know, we think it's going to ultimately impact those properties they've got, you know, be it from who's having to pay the cost of connecting to that adjacent seawall, be it from sort of scouring that could create sort of a pool on that sort of backed up seawall portion, and raising a lot of the issues we talked about that I think Mr. Lacey discussed in terms of who becomes liable, in terms of premises liability, who becomes liable in terms of maybe potentially having to re-nourish that. So these are a number of costs that are ultimately going to go into that property, and we think it's going to be a really serious detriment to their property value. So, you know, I don't know how many parcels this is actually going to affect, but I know it's going to affect their 3, and to the extent that a lot of other folks already have their seawalls, we think that they should be given that same opportunity. And then Commissioner Soberfield, we do also have to mention again, and this was in the letter, but we do respectfully object to your participation. You know, again, given that this is going to impact some properties that are under current litigation with those easement interests, in this discussion, I don't understand there to be a vote on this tonight, though.
There will be.
Well, then we would object to your participation on the vote. But ultimately, we again urge the city to reject this ordinance, because I do think it's a taking of their property. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Can I take this out? My voice is a little strained today.
It's not, the
It's
battery
not working?
dies.
Okay, that's fine. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, Chair Stubblefield and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Brooke Blosser, and I'm the Land, Water, and Wildlife Project Manager with the Coastal Conservation League located at 131 Spring Street. I'm here today to provide comment on Ordinance 031-24 relating to the creation of a 25-foot setback line from the perpetual easement line for seawalls and a 5-foot setback for revetments. The city of Folly Beach is enjoyed by beachgoers across South Carolina, myself included, and beyond. As such, the city should make sure that the public resource is enjoyable for generations to come. The state of South Carolina has charged the city of Folly Beach with managing its beachfront and thus for protecting this asset from unwise development. The construction of hard erosion control structures, such as seawalls and revetments, has been proven to increase beachfront erosion. When done so close to the perpetual easement line, the construction of these structures can destroy the public beach, and they threaten the future of Folly to receive federal assistance from the Army Corps of Engineers for renourishments. The ordinance discussed here today is a common sense solution that would result in better outcomes for Folly Beach's most valuable resource, beachgoers, and property owners. Periodic beach renourishment projects by the Army Corps help to prolong the life of our beaches, increase the area for public enjoyment, and build upon naturally occurring dune systems. These renourishment projects are an investment into the future of Folly Beach, and hard erosion control structures too close to the perpetual easement line can put this investment at risk. We encourage the City of Folly Beach Planning Commission to approve of the ordinance 031-24 relating to the setback line. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
most of you. I'm gonna change it up a little bit. I'm Stacy Freeman. I'm a resident here on Folly. I live on the east side in the first block. And I'm also the business license official and short-term rental director here for the city of Folly. I'm just gonna read this so I make sure I don't forget anything. I was excited to hear that the city was actively working to help with long-term housing and employee housing here on the island. However, I was trying to kind of stay out of it since I work for the city. But however, I was disappointed after last month's meeting when the recommendation to include the city admin side of City Hall was not going to be possibly recommended for the extension program or the stipend program. I've been a resident here for 5 years. Most recently, a long-term renter after going through a divorce. And Folly's my home. I work here, I live here, I go to church here, I have friends here, support the community. It's my home, and I love Folly. I was very fortunate to find a place on the east side while going through this transition with an owner who worked with me with the rent. But my one-bedroom home with utilities is more than one paycheck. So even looking at other locations in West Ashley, James Island, North Charleston, for a place to live where a female is by herself and feels safe, it was more or the same. So it's a problem. If you look at, and I think it might, I printed it off the website, I think you might have it in your packets, but if you look at the base.
I'm gonna pause you real quick. Yeah, in your packets, I printed off, not in your packet, but today in a hard copy, yes. That's from our website. That's the list of every public salary for the city. And then I went in there and wrote the line where the area median income for Charleston County is about $84,000. So I have that line showing you where 100% is. So anything below that is below the area median income, anything above is over. So yes, they do have that.
So if you look at that sheet for city employees, you will see that most of the salaries are higher for the public safety employees than the city hall administration employees. My code enforcement officers, I have 3 on staff, they are at the bottom of the list, making the same or less than public works. And I know, like, not just for myself, but for all employees that have salaries, by the time that your $10,000 to $20,000 is taken out, you are really not bringing home much. So the stipend program would benefit those employees. I have one that is in Section 8 housing on James Island. I have another employee, which I have a letter that she wrote that I can read or hand you, of just about her journey. She moved here from Ohio, took a position with the city, lived an hour away and commuted to work, was fortunate enough to find a 1-bedroom, like a room to rent in a home for a little bit. That was $1,200 a month for just that. And now through help of our property managers at Fred Holland, she has been able to find a home on James Island. It's $1,500 a month before utilities. So again,
Casey,
she's.
I'm sorry to stop the nicest person on Folly.
Oh, my time's up. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Questions of the comments at this time, or?
You can, she printed off Peyton's.
I did, yeah.
The employee that she's talking about, she actually printed off some copies of her statement if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll do that. I would just ask that you look at, you know, all the options. These officers do work Monday through Friday, Saturdays and Sundays as well, nights, weekends, and holidays. So I think it's a benefit for employees.
Yeah, I think you just answered the question I was gonna ask, but I know from past discussions, similar to public safety, your officers also are going out after hours and
They are, yes.
enforcing things as part of
They
what I
are.
was support last time with that.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julie Hensley. I live at 620 East Erie. I'm a landscape architect, and I design a lot of projects on Folly and all over Charleston County. I'm here about the proposed modification to the wording of the current gravel ordinance, which has been an absolute nightmare because so many projects are just stuck, not being able to move forward with the features they desire. I have multi-million-dollar homes who are going for their CO with pine straw driveway because they really want gravel, and this is, hanging up the process. People are not able to build their gravel fire pits or pathways because all of that now counts against their lot coverage. I think that the suggested modifications are moving in the right direction, but as an end user who tries to interpret a code like this, I find it confusing and legally fraught because it is still defining gravel as an impervious surface, and it's pervious. Gravel is more pervious than dirt, and you can't change the properties of something by naming it a different thing. You have a green sweater on, it's green, it's not blue. It's just that simple. And so I think that, yes, there is a category of gravel, compacted aggregate, which has been called out here, ROC, crusher run, whatever you want to call it, that is impervious. But the way it's written, having exceptions of the other types of gravel is just a little bit confusing. And I think it's a little bit dangerous to name each type. Lava stone, I hope, went out in the 70s, and there's some other gravels that should be considered. The industry language is washed graded gravel, where you have number 789, number 57, and they're all the same size. And that way it's truly more pervious. This doesn't seem to be about permeability, however, it seems to be about aesthetics. The thing that is most disturbing to me is that the current wording wants to dictate the type of gravel and the size of gravel that you have on your driveway, which would create a homogeneous blah island, and it's something that should be in an HOA guideline, not in a city ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jerry Blackwood. I'm with Charleston Dock and Wall. I've been doing residential pile driving out here for 35 years and been doing the seawalls out here for 35 years. The city does have jurisdiction seaward of the baseline. Anything behind that, like you're saying, now the state's taken over the jurisdiction of it, but property owners are responsible for that property. Nicole's saying it with the setback, 25 foot, the homeowners have to pay for the sand to be renourished when it scours out. If somebody falls, gets hurt, they can sue the homeowner. The beach has been renourished, 6 times now? Everybody keeps saying that bulkheads, seawalls create erosion. If the beach has been renourished 5 or 6 times, which wall is creating that hardship? Which wall? There's none on Folly Beach that's making all the sand wash away. Army Corps of Engineers did a survey. If no walls were constructed and the beach was never renourished, the center of East Ashley would be high tide mark. Washout would be gone. All the houses on the backside of Marsh would be gone. The beach wouldn't be, or East Arctic would be gone. So when you guys try to, start a 25-foot setback, it doesn't make any sense. The best way to do it is to tie it from one wall to the other. When we construct a wooden wall, we pull all the surveys, we get everything done right, everything's certified. When it's done, City of Folly Beach signs off on it, end of story. One question I heard, I'm hard of hearing, so I was reading on the closed caption, but you had said something about why didn't the Army Corps say something in previous? Nobody said anything about it. There's a couple properties that did have it. Certain people decided to police the beach. They're not legal surveyors, they're not anything with construction. Everything that has been done on the city of Folly Beach has been done correctly by the city of Folly Beach. All contractors or builders that do anything on the beach have to follow a certain guideline. Yes, when a storm does come, water gets rushed in, what happens to the sand? Liquefies. So the rocks that were stacked up, the sand that's under the rocks, they roll, they tumble, they're around, it's gravity. Gravity, they're not gonna float. They're there for a reason, to break up the energy of the wave. Now, you wanna impose a 5-foot setback for revetment. Well, behind that revetment, if the homeowner decided to do that, why couldn't they have a hard structure 6 foot behind it? That makes more sense than making a 25-foot hole or a pocket. When the wall is built 25 foot back, who's responsible to extend the wind walls on both sides? It's gonna be hardship on the owner on the one side and hardship on the owner on the other side. It just doesn't, something has to be done, but it can't get done by taking it out on the homeowners of the beach. I mean, they can't do nothing about it. They're protecting their property, their investment, and they should have every right to protect it as far forward as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matt Napier. My address is 1661 East Ashley. Thank you for the opportunity to address Planning Commission about the issue of seawalls and their rock revetments. I want to start by saying that I recognize the importance of seawalls in appropriate locations and the ability of property owners to protect their property. I'm not asking that any existing seawalls be removed, and as you already know, the ordinance you're considering today is not a seawall ban, nor is there a single property that won't be eligible for a seawall due to the seawall setback ordinance. Most seawalls on the east end, where I live, are built up to or very close to the baseline, leaving virtually no room for the rock revetments in front of them. Although no setback is currently required for seawalls, the city does require large piles of rock revetments seaward of the seawalls in order to protect the integrity of the seawalls. It's proven to be impossible to have no requirement for a seawall setback while also requiring the large piles of revetments seaward of the seawalls. Even in cases where illegal revetments are unintentional, over time the effects of wave action and gravity cause the rocks to migrate seaward. Often new rock revetments are installed on top of the older rock revetments, and the pile of revetments grows larger and larger over time, and then they continue to shift seaward. In other words, rock revetments don't always stay where they were initially placed, and we need to create room for the shifting that does occur. In 2024, a large number of properties were found to have rock revetments seaward of the baseline, which means the revetments were found to be on the public beach. In recent months, the Army Corps has threatened to halt our renourishments due to encroachment violations. The city spent $12,600 of our money to remove rock revetments that were seaward of the baseline from 17 properties. There are other properties that still have revetments seaward of the baseline. I'd also like to point out that the 40-foot dune management area only allows disturbance of the DMA for a couple of uses, and one of those is for seawalls and their revetments. Once a seawall and revetment installation has been completed, the owner must bury the revetments in the sand and rebuild the dune system to the appropriate height and install native plantings. Therefore, there's no loss of use of the area whatsoever due to this seawall setback area, since the DMA is already protected. In summary, private property needs to remain on private property, and the public beach should remain public beach. The seawall ordinance you are considering today will keep revetments off our beach, reduce costs to the city, create more sea turtle nesting ground, and it will ensure that we continue receiving our federal renourishments. Thank you.
Any other citizen comments?
Good evening, I'm Jody Berg and I'm at 1103 East Arctic. And I don't have prepared remarks because this is the first opportunity I've had to really be a part of this, and I appreciate Jim's comments on somebody who already has a wall. So I, last year, thought about putting a wall in because my understanding would be that that would be a better protection for the beach. Not so much that it would protect my property, the way it's built, the water can flow through. I have the big boulders, I purchased the house a couple years ago, so I felt like the house was in good standing, but I thought, I'll do the right thing. And I wasn't able to do it last year because I wanted to involve my neighbors on either side, and of course that takes time. So in the process of taking time, now I understand that it's not an option to build the wall where I originally wanted, or thought that I could. And with this, the property, I have hardscape within that 25 feet. So in order to do what I thought would have been the right thing to help with the beach, and I love Folly and I love the public beach. I bought it purposely for that reason. I love the fact that there's people out there on the beach all the time. And I, as a property owner, would love to make sure that that's protected for the beach and public use for people to be out there using it. So in order to try to do the right thing, I'm now finding that if you do a 25 feet, all I ask is figure out how do you make this work? I'm a rule follower, right? I want to do the right thing. How do we make this work? So if we already have a property and we have things on that property and we want to be able to make it, we want to protect Folly, we want to protect our space, we want to make sure that Folly stays. Help us figure out how to do that as homeowners in a way that we can follow the rules, right? In a way that we can protect the beach, in a way that if we already have, I've got steps for the home that I purchased already. I didn't build them that way. The people that built it felt like they were following the rules at the time. Just saying 25 feet arbitrarily is almost impossible for some homeowners without pretty significant changes to something that's already been built. And how do we accomplish it all with all the stakeholders that are impacted? So I know you have a difficult decision to make. There's a lot of variables. I'm so glad I'm on this side and not on yours. But I appreciate the dedication that you are to trying to figure this out in order to make it work for everybody. So thank you.
All right, I think we're good on citizens' comments. So because we changed the order of the agenda, we will talk about ordinance 29-24 first. Jenna, your whole phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
stopping the mirroring.
Can you give us a review?
We're doing 29 first.
29-24, yeah.
So 2924 is is a recommendation from the dune management plan to institute a 25-foot setback for new seawalls.
We're doing the gravel.
Oh, sorry, we're doing gravel first?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We didn't rearrange it when we.
Okay, that's fine. Gravel, so you'll remember back in, I think it was May of this year, you had a big set of technical ordinances in front of you. There were maybe 8 or 10. And one of them was to clarify that gravel was pervious. And that y'all voted on that and recommended to send it back to council with that change. Council did not accept that or did not adopt that as recommended. And so since then, nothing has changed in the gravel, but this now, well, there has been a big change because gravel before that was considered pervious. And so in the history of the island, since that there's been zoning and there's been somebody checking on permits for driveways, it was considered pervious. So at that point, it was not. And at the recommendation of a couple of people on council, then we came back with this as a compromise. So instead of, so right now, if we're saying that gravel is impervious, then what this ordinance does is allows you to still put one gravel driveway, 2 in some cases, if you're on the beach side or if you're on the, if you are, that doesn't change. If you have the ability to put 2 driveways, that doesn't change, but 1 or 2, whichever you're allowed to have, you can have a 15-foot wide driveway made out of gravel, and that would not count against your impervious coverage limit. Anything over that, that's made out of gravel, would count then towards your impervious coverage limit.
So.
That's confusing.
It is
It is very
confusing.
confusing.
It's very
It's
confusing.
very confusing.
Pervious is pervious,
Right.
whether it's 25 feet, whether it's 40 feet, it's still pervious.
I think,
I don't understand, you're trying to break it up to this, if you do this, it's this. And that's part of the driveway is not pervious.
if I recall from that past discussion we had when it got twisted around again too, just because it is very confusing. If we forget all the logistics, the moment, my understanding, and I think what a lot of concern on council was, is we don't want parking lots in the front yard. Like, that, at the end of the day, we don't want a parking lot that can hold 10 cars in the driveway. And so whether it's pervious or impervious, it's pine straw, whether it's gravel, I think that was the spirit, was to have a 15-foot driveway, and that's where your cars go. So how do we accomplish
Is
that?
that the standard size of a driveway? What's the
Yes.
standard?
So like,
15
you
feet,
can't have
so-
more than 15 feet of gravel, if that's your driveway, then you've got grass
Then
after
that
that.
needs
or-
to be
somehow.
in the driveway, like in
Right.
this, because I agree, it's pervious or it's not pervious.
Right.
Regardless of where it's located on
Right.
your lot.
I understand not graveling the
they
whole
wanna-
yard.
Yeah, and whether it's like the brick, whether it's the pavers, whether it's gravel, whatever the driveway is, not
That happened
necessarily
to
a
the
part
people
of.
across the street from me. They have a very small space for their driveway, 15 feet. Well, they got in that gravel was not pervious, and that's what they wanted, was gravel.
But I'm thinking like, if this whole thing was over, we don't want their whole yard to be a
No,
parking
no.
lot. And whether it was grass or, like, if somebody was gonna do that, they would just park on the grass anyway. I don't think
Right.
that makes,
I think it's being too technical about this or this. A driveway is 15 feet. That's what needs to be stated. The driveway is.
And made with pervious material.
To
so
be
it's-
made with pervious material.
But it brings you back
Doesn't
to
that
like.
cut down
where
you
it's
graveling
pervious.
your whole yard?
We
That's-
do require pervious driveways.
Yes, that's where it gets.
Yes,
Which
we
is
do.
part of the conflict then,
Correct.
because we're saying that if the gravel is impervious, and that counts against your impervious coverage, but we require pervious driveways. And so it's making people who are already at their 35% coverage limit change from a gravel driveway to being forced to put in pavers if they still want to build that big of a house, or already have that big of a house that covers the 35% impervious coverage. Then that increases the cost. I will say that does increase the cost when that happens, but that
Great
is part
deal.
of
Yeah.
I agree.
that. I don't know if I answered your
Yes.
So
question.
you're giving another option, basically it's giving another option for those that maybe have maxed out.
Right.
That still need.
It's
Right.
allowing them to put in one 15-foot driveway and not the entire lot as gravel, which you could do for 20 years. I mean, that's been, I don't know that there are people who've done that, but it's,
I haven't seen.
yeah.
I
I've been
have a
here
neighbor
40,
with
so.
gravel. I
I
don't
mean,
know,
there's
it's like landscape though.
Yeah, well, that's part of
It's
the
not something you
landscape.
park on.
There are a number of
But-
properties that are just the whole front yard's gravel, and
Yeah.
there's 15 cars in the driveway.
Yeah.
Like, we all know what we're talking
Yep.
about here. Yeah, I mean, that exist, and there's quite a few of them on the island. I think that was the spirit that council,
Yeah.
why they didn't pass a recommendation, because that's what they were trying to avoid.
Didn't want to encourage that.
Right, so how do we help solve for that, I don't know how
That's
we
the
get so
problem.
technical with, you have to have grass or dirt or plantings or whatever, everything but 15 feet for your driveway. That's us being
But-
too, dictating too much, I guess, but.
But would it even stop people from doing that, gravel or not, They would just park in the mud or the grass or.
And if they have
If they're
room, they
gonna
can
have that
still
many
put
people-
gravel in if they haven't met their limit, then they could still theoretically do the front yard or however
The
much.
whole yard and gravel.
Only those
Depends
people
on
who
the
have
size
a
of
house.
If they have
Yeah.
room.
Yeah,
If
it
they
depends
have
on the
room.
size of
They
the house,
have,
right?
right.
Yeah, so this is for the people who don't have room, giving them the ability to put gravel and not have to go to the expense of the pervious pavers.
Because we're
Because they're already-
considering gravel as impervious.
Correct.
In
I
that
think that's where the
application.
technicality gets it all, makes it
Yeah.
complicated. Am I right that that's kind of what the spirit of the conversation was in the past, and the spirit of why council didn't adopt it? So how do we help solve for that? Right.
I mean, I agree with her statement about having to define the minuscule details of what kind of gravel you can use is too far. But we could just keep the sentence with no compactable subbase, just that phrase there. Right, yeah, so.
What were the
what is it?
words, Julie, that you, the description that you
Washed, graded gravel,
washed, graded? I got washed,
so it's sorted to have a uniformity of size, and all the sandy, dusty stuff is washed out.
Does that make it non-compactable?
Yes, that makes it more permeable.
More
Yeah.
Pervious?
Yeah.
Permeable meaning
Pervious,
pervious.
yes. Yeah, and I would just add, I ran out of time, so I couldn't say everything I wanted, but on the gravel issue, you know, in light of the LA wildfires, gravel as mulch is not a terrible thing. It can be done in an aesthetically pleasing way. And it's something you don't have to refresh twice a year. It's fireproof. Pine straw is extremely flammable. You know, I have a client from LA who already did a desert garden with, you know, succulents and gravel, and I'm designing a new one for him that's going to be a Zen garden with boulders and moss, and, you know, it's, I don't feel like the zoning code should be controlling things like that. These are design issues, and dictating a specific type of gravel. If you want river rock and you have to have a granite driveway, it's a design nightmare for me. Plus, it trashes your shoes.
I guess I feel like as planning commission, our job is to try to make a recommendation that helps protect the spirit of why it came back to us in the first place. I don't know what the solve is necessarily.
They sent it to us for public comment so we can see what the public wants.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to,
Make a recommendation.
in the best interest of the community, what would be workable? I have a question on the very first page here. What is ROC?
That's what she was saying.
What does that stand for, do you know?
It's the lime-based, it's used as a sub-base, and it contains limestone, and it basically turns into concrete. Other names for it,
Okay.
crusher run, ROC, but,
So it compacts, and we do not allow that, have never allowed that.
and just a suggestion on how do we solve it. The current ordinance requires that, you know, if you're building a 6-bedroom house, you have to be able to accommodate 6 cars without stacking. Every car requires 200 square feet. If your house is designed to hold 4 cars under it, but you can only count 2 because they would have to be stacked, all of that is spilling out into the yard and creating that parking lot. So just allowing stacking would reduce the size of parking areas quite a bit.
That's it.
Part of
Yeah.
our issue too, and this is not before us to solve, but it is a part of this conversation, is that my understanding is that our ordinance for like a short-term rental requires a plan for where your parking plan
For
on your
every
property. Yet, you have to provide a parking spot per bedroom, but there's not a max on the number of cars that can be on that property. And so that's where you get these, you know, where you get 10, 15
Well,
cars.
there's not a max on how many bedrooms can be in a house either.
Well, there's a
So
max
I think-
square footage though.
Yeah.
So, so that's adding to the issue.
This is driveways. I don't see anything about stacking cars in.
That's a different.
That's under different.
A totally
Yes.
different one. Okay, well, for the purposes of tonight, up to you, whatever.
I mean, do we change the wording, get rid of,
Yeah.
like, gravel, consisting of number 57 and 789, just to wash graded gravel? Like, does that that gives
Yes.
you options as, not you, but that gives designers option, but it does still keep it gravel.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
what
a
I
less
think
expensive
is-
option than pavers.
Yeah, I think that's a good change that would accomplish what they want and give the homeowner more options to use for gravel, right?
Right.
Because wash graded gravel could be any kind of style or size.
Right.
Remind me, Jenna, does our ordinance require a delineation of that 15 feet? Like, does it have to be a clear line that says, here's your driveway, that's it? Like, a
That
defined,
doesn't exist as it is, so what
right.
it says
So
here is it
maybe
does
there's a way
require,
to add that
well, it
then.
does require a border and maintaining that border of the 15-foot,
And the border can be, like, just, like,
like a little steel,
Edging.
yeah, edging.
so
yeah.
it does
Metal.
require,
Yeah. This does.
delineation.
Yeah.
That's what, I missed that part. Oh, it's.
Gravel
okay,
driveway,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
that's
so it's
the
right.
borders flush with
Right.
the surface of the driveway.
But currently, we don't have that.
Currently, we do not.
So
That's
that's
it.
what we're proposing,
Yeah,
adding.
that's
Got
right,
it, okay.
yeah.
I knew we had talked about it.
And then also if the gravel touches the roadway, is that an issue with DOT?
So that's not
Yeah,
an issue
something else.
anymore. DOT regulations do not allow gravel in the right of way at all. That's where people park and in that, for your driveway, for that little
Right.
bit, no gravel. And so
So
that,
it would stop before it gets there anyway, the driveway?
well,
sorry, I
it would
never-
continue with something, it'd have to be,
It would be
pavers for
pavers.
the part that crosses
Right.
over the right of way.
Right,
And so that's something that used to be a problem because DOT did not enforce that and people could put gravel in that right of way, but you cannot anymore.
so if somebody's applying to do these two 15-foot driveways, it would go to the end of their property, and then from that driveway to the road would be pavers, because
Correct.
that's the right of way.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's already there.
Like,
It's
the
not something
closest
we need
any
to add
gravel
in.
will make to any road is 12.5 feet.
Right, okay, okay, so that's not something that would need to be outlined, because it's already part
That's
of,
already-
like, it's already part of like the permitting
DOT
and of
regulations.
DOT of how you're gonna build your driveway, okay.
You say
Right.
12.5 feet, is that from you're saying from 12.5 feet in your driveway from the edge of the curb, call it, right, into your land?
Right.
That
About
has to be
12.5
12
feet is
12.5 feet.
about the right of way
Of
from most of the
pavers.
island. When you get past the washout, it's 37.
On the driveway specifically, or any part of the yard, going back to the whole yard is gravel, is it just the driveway that
The
that's?
entire right of way.
Okay.
The entire, from the
Okay.
road going in 12.5
12
feet,
Okay,
no gravel can be there at all in the driveway or in any parking areas.
To the property line.
To the
because
property.
in some areas,
To
the
the-
right of way
So,
75 feet.
past Past the washout, past the washout, the right of way is a lot bigger, it's 75 feet, and so that number is, it's a lot more, but it is to whatever the property line is for most of the island, would be about 12.5 feet.
You don't have any other questions about?
Well, like, like the ones that are already there, where it's just gravel, 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 gravel everywhere. Like, there's nothing to be done about that, I mean, cause it's grandfathered,
new.
it's there.
This is new.
It's new, it's
This
just
is
new.
all new
It's
stuff.
just new, so whatever changes people make, this might kick in, or new builds, or new change, you know, that's when it may kick in, but the other stuff gets to stay.
It's like if I take up my
Right.
concrete driveways,
you have to replace it with the
You would
new-
have to
I
replace
I
it,
can't
think-
replace it with concrete.
right,
So
Right.
it can
and you have to make sure it's
break and
15 feet.
chip and everything else.
Pervious
I can't-
concrete.
Yeah,
Yeah, you could do pervious concrete, but yeah, you could not put impervious concrete back.
I could put that asphalt like they did the wall.
That's pervious.
That'd be pretty.
All right, y'all have any more questions?
And then what happens when they get when you say continuous monitoring of these like walls with the gravel? So
The
who's
edging?
right, the edging. How would you monitor something like that? Are y'all giving tickets, or are you making a friendly note, like, hey, maybe this spring you should check up on your,
It would be a friendly note for something like that.
Wait, for monitoring, for,
For the edging, to make sure it wasn't spilleth over? Well, how would you monitor some, who's doing that, riding around with a, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if it's on private property, that is gonna be at the bottom of our list of concerns.
We got more things to worry about.
Gravel's gravel.
so since this kind of in that same spirit, since this is, just applies to, you know, improvements or new builds and new driveways and stuff, should there be anything about, you know, if you just build it all and then, you know, just, I guess that there's a stop here now, which there wasn't before. Like, I would be concerned if you maybe, you know, a homeowner building something and just building it, and it's just, you know, completely overdone, and then there's not language in here to say, well, you have to remove it.
You're saying if they build more than what's permitted?
Right.
Well, the language doesn't
Yeah.
have to say that you're forced to remove it, we would ask them to remove it. Like, if it comes to us. and we
Because of
get-
this now.
Because of.
We have
because of-
Eric. We
Right.
have Eric.
if-
We've had Eric for a long time.
We love Eric. Eric will
Right.
take care of
If
that.
someone were to put any kind of driveway where they were not supposed to, or any kind of material, or more than the scope of their permit, or whatever it is, we do make them remove it. That's, I mean, that is in the city's power, whether it says it in here or not.
Right.
Same thing like with short-term rentals, when we find people who are renting on the below flood, they have to remove that rental,
Right, right.
remove the habitable space, it's the same thing.
Is this something that, like, the short-term rental, like, I know you guys already police so many things, but is that is this, you know, the driveways and, you know, I guess, do you guys eyeball that too? Like,
Right now, they're checking parking on septic, you know, and making sure that, that's done, but it's an ordinance, and their title now, instead of just code enforcement officer, is their ordinance compliance officers now, so they're not just doing short-term rental things. They're doing
It's-
things that public safety looks for, that
Right.
Eric's got something he needs them to check, so, yeah, they're out doing a little of
Driveways.
everything.
driveways.
Yeah.
Driveway.
That could be one, yes.
Okay. We ready to do this?
And to that point, we do require the parking for short-term rentals, they have to put it on the map. But we don't require anything for driveways at this point currently.
Wait, say that again?
Okay.
When you have a short-term rental, you have to give the city a plan where your parking is, so we can see that you have parking available that's not on the septic system. There's nothing right now within requiring driveways or to be on that plan.
I'd like to make a motion to
To approve.
approve, yeah,
Okay, and
the
then,
changes we've made.
and then, so you make a motion to approve, I'll make a motion to amend.
Yes.
Okay. And the only things to amend are to cross out under 161.02 C4. So next page, cross out number 57, number 79 granite, and replace with washed and graded gravel. Leaving.
Like washed and weighted,
Washed,
graded.
graded,
Okay. Sorted for size.
Leaving with no compactable subbase up to, leaving the rest of it.
I would
I think we
recommend
have to add
taking out
that.
with no compactable subbases, the entire, up to 2 gravel driveways of, as allowed under
Washed and
1660611, washed graded gravel up to 15 feet wide each.
Yeah.
Isn't the 15 feet only relevant in within the right of way though, and it's not, and you can't have it in the right of way?
You can't have it in the right of way, as this is written, it's allowing that 15 feet on the private property. That is the measurement
Of the
given
driveway.
to allow, if you have gravel there, to be,
Okay, can I say something else?
that's up to Paula.
We're moving on this. But the same change under 166.06-11 to remove or gravel consisting of 57, 59, to put of pervious materials or washed and graded gravel. And remove with note. any discussion on that? I know we discussed already.
We
but
discussed this quite a bit.
we-
Yeah, we have.
For the record, it's still not perfect, right?
All right, call the roll, please.
Okay, so to be clear, the motion to amend is to remove the words consisting of 57 and 789 granite with no compactable subbase and putting in washed graded gravel.
Right.
And that's both in section 4, maximum lot coverage, and the next page, D.
Yep.
I have a question. What do you recommend for, say, you own the ties? And sooner or later, the asphalt breaks up. What do you recommend for a huge parking lot like that?
That's a good question, yeah. And this is only applicable to residential properties. I don't know if it applies to commercial.
For that, we would recommend pervious asphalt or pervious concrete. So
Do
it
they
would,
have pervious concrete?
it does exist.
It's
Yes,
not-
pervious
not
concrete
cheap,
and
yes,
pervious
it
asphalt.
I didn't know there was pervious gravel, asphalt until they did the walkway,
Mm.
Yeah.
There is.
yeah, which is
Alright.
cool.
So
Alright,
we're
vote.
voting on the amendment first.
Yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. McNabb,
Here.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Norton,
Yes.
Ms. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. McDade,
Yep.
Ms. Stubblefield.
Yes. All right, and then we do have to vote on the ordinance as amended, whether or not to recommend to council.
Okay.
I got a motion from Mr. Norton. Can I get a second?
Yep. Second.
All right, Ms. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. McDade,
Yes.
Ms. McNabb,
Yeah.
Mr. Norton,
Yes.
Ms. Mumford, Oops, not yet. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
and Ms. Stubblefield.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, the next ordinance is on the 25-foot setback. Is there anything additional you wanted to explain besides what Dr. Elko talked about?
I don't have anything else.
Okay, do you have my pictures?
Yes.
I had some pictures I wanted to show y'all to show exactly what we're talking about.
It's gonna take me a second if you wanna go ahead and start
Okay.
discussing.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say you can start. Yeah. The 25-foot, well, so right now, maybe, Nicole, you might wanna be handy. Just get my head wrapped around this again for like the 5th time, but, so we already have to have 40 feet, right? I mean, the 40 feet is requirement, and we're suggesting bringing it 25 feet,
Not
well, sorry,
additionally.
not additionally, yeah, but making sure that it's not 40 feet. Actually, let me get back to my question. That's from the actual property, structure, right, the house. 40 feet is from the house or any building or
It's
whatever.
from the baseline or perpetual easement line
Right.
landward.
And then
toward
the house can be anywhere, any structure can be anywhere after the 40 feet landward, right? Okay,
And
so,
some houses
would-
are in that 40 feet because we adopted it
right,
a couple years ago.
late, late. But would this also cover like the pools and pool houses and sheds and everything else is it, you know what I mean?
Those already cannot be built in the
I wanna make
area.
sure, I mean, but I've seen it done, you know, a couple of years ago, and that's why I was interested, it was brought to me to ask about, just assure that
No
nothing can be there.
The
right?
only thing that's allowed in the dune management area, the 40 feet from the perpetual easement line landward, is seawalls, beach, walkovers over the dunes, sand, and vegetation.
Okay.
You can't put a gazebo in there, you can't put a pool in there.
Okay.
So this does not change that.
Okay, good.
But not if it's already in.
And grandfathered.
But not if it's already in.
If it's grandfathered.
It's
It
already-
has nothing to do with
grandfather.
it's already in, these are
Yeah.
going, this is moving forward,
We
yes.
can't make people bust up their pools.
Right. We're not making anybody
We
take
don't
out a-
do that.
Take out a pool.
We don't do that.
And I'm sure you've all read this, but if a house is existing already and they don't have that 25 foot, there's a carve out for them.
Yes, I read
So
that.
they still can,
understood you before, but then this threw me off.
Oh, it's so little. Oh, there it goes. All right, so this is a picture of, this is pre-renourishment, which is why you can see all the rock revetments. At this property in particular, their property line is only like a foot or two from their seawall. So most of their revetments aren't even on their own property. And then the baseline's at the end of their steps. So you can see there's a ton of revetments seaward of that right there. So this is what we want to avoid. And then do the next.
And this was before renourishment, so this
This
has
is
been,
before
this has
renourishment.
been addressed. This property does not have anything in front of the baseline right now.
So
But-
all of those
but-
rocks were moved.
Yes, anything behind the baseline was pushed behind the
Was-
baseline.
They pushed it behind.
I don't know if they
or
took it away,
whatever.
some of it was taken
Yeah.
away, some of
Yeah.
it was pushed back, but right now, there's nothing in front of the baseline of that,
Yeah.
property.
And I'm not trying to say anything about these properties, I'm just showing examples of, this is what we wanna avoid. And then the next one. The orange is where the Army Corps came and marked, so they spray painted down, and that is the baseline there. So again, the Army Corps came in and said, you guys have to get these removed before we're gonna do our renourishment.
These are just examples of what we're trying to,
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
okay.
And then this last one is the photo that is actually from the dune management plan that Dr. Elko mentioned. That's at Summer Place. Those houses, you could argue, are some of the most seaward facing houses, and they've got it completely back there. And that's all we're trying to accomplish here, is to make sure their revetments, their seawall is far enough back that it's not tumbling over to where it's gonna potentially make it where the Army Corps says they're not giving us any more renourishments, or taxpayers having to remove those things. So that's all.
Good. Great,
All right, well, we need a motion to do this.
I'll motion.
Okay,
Move to discuss, is that what you're saying?
motion, well, we have
Motion
to,
to,
yeah.
Does somebody make a motion?
motion to discuss.
And a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I think we
If there is
discussed
none, I have an amendment
it. Okay,
proposed. However, I just want to say to all of you, it is, no wording in it is changed at all. What I'm proposing, I'll pass these out, is that our ordinance as it is now is, seawalls, revetments, berms, bulkheads, and riprap. And bulkheads, riprap, and berm are all marsh side, and revetments and seawalls are all ocean side. And there's the delineate, or not the delineate, but the line that affects how we make, can I give you one?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. So on the marsh side, the line where there's buffers or setbacks is called the critical line. On the beach side, we have the baseline and the perpetual easement line. Now the state has their beaches critical area that in the past few months they started claiming. So all this is moving it from all being one thing into being seawalls here and bulkheads here, just so it's a lot easier to read through. So,
Summarize that again. Yeah, summarize that
okay,
again.
look,
So,
here, we have this here, we have our full ordinance in our packet. Construction standards for berms, bulkheads, riprap, seawalls, revetments, and retaining walls.
no. Too much.
So it's split out to be construction standard, well, it's still the same heading and still the same definitions, except when you go, so same definitions here. And then where it would be, that's A, okay, B is following minimum construction standards for seawalls and revetments. It's worded exactly the same as the existing ordinance.
Yeah, where's B
Where's
on the
this on
original?
this?
I don't think there is a
On
B.
this one.
So this is new?
Or did we not put the,
What we have.
I copied it from the actual thing.
8.
Oh, yeah, it's missing. Oh, it's.
So all of
This whole
this-
section here is not in here. Oh, this is what these.
So-
What's this mean?
Oh,
What, are we missing that whole thing?
All right, so
Yeah.
right now, people use seawall and bulkhead interchangeably, those two words, but they do have technical definitions. A seawall is only on the ocean side and a bulkhead is only on the river side. And I think what Paula's trying to do is, right now, we address all of those in the same section of the ordinance. She wanted to break that up. So if you look on page, or what you have here, starts with A, for the purposes, these are definitions. B is seawalls and revetments. And if you turn to 1, 2,
Okay, so
3,
this is
4,
adding
if you
B
turn to
here.
page 4, you see
The letter
section
B.
C now,
Yeah.
then talks about bulkheads.
So as
so
far
adding
as, yeah,
What that is.
And
Okay.
let me say this, if the goal is to separate these out, I can go through and
Yeah.
make that very clear for council, because they're gonna be the ones that will have to amend it on the floor with that. So your recommendation just is to, if you would make that motion, your recommendation would be, to separate seawall and bulkheads out in the ordinance, so it's
I agree
clear.
with that.
This is
part.
what it
I-
would look like, essentially, what
Potentially,
Paula has
but-
given us, like, that's,
That's moving.
Because this
That's-
is saying.
so it
just-
Using
says
the-
the same
yeah,
thing,
okay.
it's just redesigned so
Yeah.
that if you had a question about a berms or bulkhead, you would go to that section. If you had a question about a seawall, you go to that section, and it wouldn't be all,
I think that's
I like
more,
the
that's more
organization.
clear and easier to,
I know it looks like,
for the city to
Huge, but-
address.
Yeah.
It seems like it'd be easier for your team to go, okay, we're talking seawall, because we're on the beach, and we're talking bulkhead.
And to be able to direct people to a section and not have it confusing and be together like that, yeah.
so where is there a bulkhead section?
yeah, it's, I think,
That was the section that started on C on the 4th page.
right there.
C, okay, got
Column
it,
M.
got it, yeah, okay, so there.
When you do that?
So this is
Okay.
just copy and
Yeah, I just
pasted
did
from
that
the other section, so the
Okay.
crossed out parts are about seawalls.
Right, right.
But like you'll clean up, like, what is it, 68? 5, where it says protection from flanking, it says bulkheads will be either tie into adjacent bulkheads, wouldn't that be?
Those are like crossed out.
What's
So
the
it'd be
question?
1, 2,
Oh,
3.
okay.
On the top, the side, the flanking sides on the seawall, it's got bulkhead language in one of these sections.
And I'll,
You can clean up.
I'll
You'll get
clean
all
up
that.
that, I'll do
She'll
that
clean
cleanup.
it.
So the
Yeah,
recommendation is just
If your
separate the two to
recommendation
address
is to
them
make
separately.
them
Just
mirror
separate,
each
yeah,
other
okay.
and
So,
one section is
I
seawall.
make a motion to amend to separate into seawalls and revetments and a second section of berms, bulkheads, riprap, and the
For
fourth
discussion
part.
tonight, can
I
we stick to what you,
second.
it gave us in our pack, so we don't get too confused with that, and she can separate them for us?
We can.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm making a motion to make a recommendation that they be separated, and
Yeah.
Jenna would separate.
And then I will separate,
That
and so when
works.
it gets to council, they'll make the
Yeah,
amendment on the floor of the actual, and we'll have
I'm
that.
good
you're
with
adding
separate, but I wanna,
A B and a C, pretty much.
Right, and B will be
Under-
the seawall, and C will be the
C.
bulkhead, instead of having that
Right,
all
okay.
together, yeah.
in this, given that suggestion, which I agree with, is there anything else in here that, like, how, we're addressing bulkhead in this way in this ordinance, and we're addressing, like, just clarify the difference in what we're recommending, bulkhead versus seawall? Because bulkhead, I guess we're looking at it a little differently, right?
Mhm.
Not the
There's
25
totally
foot
different
setback.
rules for
Right.
the marsh side.
Right, right.
Right, so they still have, there's a 15-foot setback from the critical area on the marsh side, and so I think that's still in here in the,
It's still, it's the
in the
same.
bulkhead,
It's
in the
just-
bulkhead section.
But that's-
Nothing will change
Okay, that stays the same.
for this, it will just
bulkhead.
be separated out so that it's clear, these are rules for seawalls and these are rules for bulkheads, and the few minor differences, such as if the seawall setback passes, would only be on the seawall side and not on the bulkhead side. So y'all's recommendation would just be to separate bulkhead and seawall, sections
Yep, in this motion to amend.
in the motion to amend, yes, which I have a motion, does anybody have a second?
Second.
All right, so if there's no other discussion, we're voting just on the amendment to separate out seawalls versus bulkheads in the two sections.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, Mr. McDade,
yep,
Ms. McNabb, Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yeah.
Ms. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. Norton,
Yeah.
and Ms. Stubblefield.
Yes. So now the motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance, or not to adopt, to recommend the ordinance to council as amended. Or,
Or if there's any other discussion.
Yeah.
yeah, is there any other discussion?
Yeah, the only question I have, and I don't know how it works on this, but having run into this back on the creek, if there's an existing seawall with the tiebacks, and you're the new neighbor and you're building new, can you automatically tie into your neighbor? You have to get your neighbor's approval to tie in, or otherwise, then you're gonna create washout basins like on the backside in the creeks.
Yeah, so you would just build your wall with an angle at the end of it to make sure everything ties together. So it might look, might look like that, but
It'll be wavy anyway.
Correct, but do you have to have your neighbor's approval on either side to tie that wall in?
you have to ask the city. I don't know the answer to
Yeah,
that.
I mean, we would have to at some point.
Yeah, because that was a problem for me on the creek.
The neighbor wouldn't agree.
No, they built walls.
Right.
And so it pushed everything in my yard, so I had to build a wall.
Right.
I didn't have an option because the whole tidal creek was coming in my yard because the other people built and didn't tie in.
So if someone were to put one in that is 25 foot back, yes, they could connect it to the other one. To
that
the existing
note, though,
one
like,
up closer to it.
To that note though, because they didn't is what caused your problem, so it's like, we need to make sure that we're saying you have to. Is that what you're
Well, that's what
thinking?
I'm saying is,
Yeah.
is
Because we're still gonna cause erosion and
correct, because
Trauma
the
here.
neighbors did that on either side and didn't ask me. My backyard started flooding, and then I had no choice but to build one.
this is a similar issue that we have with being able to fill dirt on a property, and then all of a sudden the people beside it are flooded.
Yeah.
And this is happening all across my street. And so,
So that's why I
almost
was
like
just,
you have to go ahead and fill in your neighbors and everybody else. I don't know how we address that necessarily, but it's the
We
same
did
issue.
that a
Well,
long
that- yeah,
time
that
Like,
was
we
ago.
my
almost need to
question
find a way
is-
to say that you have to tie in.
You
Well,
can't,
something.
this,
by the city, you can't do that.
You can, well, you
Well,
could.
You could.
well, they have it where you had pointed out that had the bulkhead language in the seawall part. It says will either tie into adjacent bulkheads or will have an adequate return wall.
So does it
Yeah, but-
force that to happen?
but earlier, when the gentleman with the dock company was speaking, it sounded like people had tried to do that and had to go get other permits to allow it to tie into the adjacent. Can you do that automatically? So if I'm gonna build a seawall on a new property, I can just build it and tie into my neighbor and I don't have to ask them?
I think,
You would have to ask them, but that would be
What if
part
they
of,
say no?
That's still the case.
yeah.
You shoot them.
Well, I
No,
didn't-
I didn't know the
mean,
answer to that.
That's gonna happen,
Yeah,
and
I
then
don't-
what does that do with retaining water behind the seawall on a major storm? Cause that's what happened to me on the flood.
Nicole, do you have any, can we ask Nicole maybe to come back?
Yeah, how they do it in other
Yeah.
communities, since we're the only one that have to
So
make these
the-
decisions ourselves.
I think this scenario is less likely on the beachfront because there's so few lots, if I understand the question correctly. On the marshfront where you don't have a lot of bulkheads already, then this is why we're actually, and I also wanted to note, we're starting the marshfront management plan update. And we do these updates with a lot of we ask for stakeholder input, like the concerns listed here are what we've heard from people. We didn't hear that this, that this particular thing was an issue. So when we talk about marshfront bulkheads, please be engaged and voice your concerns early. I don't think that it's as big of an issue on the beachfront because tying in is sort of natural, given the very small number of unarmored beachfront lots, as it is on the marsh side, where building new bulkheads is going to impact your neighbors. And as far as I recall, on the marshfront berms and bulkheads, there is a new, since the marshfront management plan, like neighbor notification procedure. I don't know the exact specifics.
Yeah, I was just worried if you don't tie it back in, you have a big storm, it then washes out stuff back on the homeowner's property that they're then liable to fix on their own dime
Yeah,
because their neighbor didn't wanna tie into their
tie-ins
seawall,
are definitely recommended.
which I don't think is right for your neighbor, your yard to get messed up because someone else doesn't wanna tie in the seawall and floods out your yard that we would then have to force them to fix,
yeah.
so.
But that'll be something that'll be addressed with the marsh management plan when they rework that, like the tie-in part, because there's more, I guess, opportunity for that to happen than on the beach right now. Because this is, talks about the bulkheads, but it's more,
Yeah, I'm fully supportive. I don't want rocks on the beach.
Yeah.
But I just also want to be conscious of people not getting stuck with a very large bill because of the neighbor not
right.
building it,
Yeah,
thinking through everything.
can we ask council to look at that?
To look at what to do if somebody says no, if the neighbor says no.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll talk.
Some kind of
before.
ordinance that could address it?
Okay.
Or
Okay.
address it in here somehow.
Yeah,
Their
part of your recommendation could say we are concerned about what happens if the neighbor says
Okay.
no.
Yeah, that's my only concern. Okay.
It's a good one. Okay, we ready to vote?
Yeah.
Voting on the motion as amended. Go ahead and call the roll.
Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Norton,
Yes.
Ms. Capel,
Yes.
Mr. McDade,
Yeah.
Ms. McNabb,
Yes.
and Ms. Stubblefield.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And then we have, oh God, I don't know where my agenda is. A lot of paper.
It's affordable housing is just the only thing left.
Okay, so we're gonna pop our discussion about ADUs to next month. But, two things that I wanted to address tonight with the affordable housing was, number one, does everybody have this printout? It's essentially categorized payroll of all city employees. It includes administrative staff. I wanted to propose that instead of recommending what last month we talked about, there being a stipend for public safety and a separate one for public works, I wanted to see if you guys would be open to just having a stipend period for all city employees, because this really was an eye-opener to me to see what everybody does make, and that there's, you know, a lot of the city staff is
Yeah, this is very helpful.
below.
I know, I was very supportive of just all staff, like all city staff last time, so
Just have one
I think this is helpful to support while I was pushing
I
for
wasn't
that
here last time, but I'd asked for this, and this
Yeah.
is very helpful. I would recommend it's for everyone.
And the truth is, we were talking about 18 positions that were left out of 70, right? It was 69 people, and there were like 18 of them that wouldn't have been eligible
In my
because we
opinion.
had separated it just to those, that
In
small
my-
group.
In my opinion, that's not right. It's either everybody or.
Yeah.
Actually, do we need to make a
Affordable
motion
housing
to
or not
discuss?
affordable housing?
But you don't
Do we need to make a
want,
motion to
like,
discuss first, or we get?
well, you don't want, I mean, I think the short-term rental enforcers are definitely important to have here, but you would hate for a public safety person to lose out.
Well, we're
Like,
recommending
however it's gonna be-
increase the
stipend.
To increase the
and the amount that they
stipend,
get.
so it could be,
But it'd be open to more categories of people.
okay, so it's not like you're saying, all right, we've got 10 to give away, you know, because we don't even really have the properties yet.
Right,
Yeah.
so that's kind
So,
of,
okay,
So
never mind.
last month, the
Yeah.
recommendation was to expand the amount, which is 600 currently,
Right.
to increase that amount. It was also to increase the total, that's the amount per person, to increase the total amount budgeted for this, because you don't want to take places away from increasing it. But then also, as what I'm hearing, I think, is to increase the total
The
amount, so that
total amount.
administrative
Who can
staff
participate.
could not
Participate.
compete with
Yes.
public
and,
safety.
yeah,
Okay.
it's two different
Yeah.
things, just
Yeah, there is a
one
bigger, more robust stipend
Everybody. So that would be the other question, up to 100% area median income, 120, or I'm inclined to say everyone, because that only exempts 3 people, and I don't think, you know, if we cap it at 120% area median income,
What is the, like, just what is the county? How do other communities?
Everyone either caps it at 100 or 120.
Okay.
Because if the discussion is about affordable housing, it's tied to salary at some point.
Yeah.
and then I assume, but when I agree with y'all, this would not apply if you were a part-time employee.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Part-time.
For
Would
part-time.
you want it, like, would you say it does not apply if it's a part-time employee?
I think it should not
You do?
be,
Not be?
not be.
Well, I guess, what would be the
Well,
objective of eliminating that?
How do they
I'm
have-
assuming just
More money's open to the full-time people.
Yes.
more, yes, which actually does naturally limit the pool, or reduce the pool size, not the pool of money,
That
but
would
the
be
number of
considered for
applicants.
potential.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah, I would recommend all full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
My
That's,
vote.
how many people is that?
I would second that.
Do you go to 120, like everybody, or keep it at 100%?
I think just in the spirit of like
Affordable
Doing everybody.
affordable housing and fairness and like, what is the general county do? You know, I'm just using that as like, we're not picking and choosing, I guess, like what's the more natural baseline in the county, in the
think-
state?
So,
You said 100%.
it's either 100 or 120, because that's standard across the board, what people choose is generally either 100% or 120%.
And truly, like, I don't know who, I think I know who the city administrator is, but I don't know everybody's titles anyway, so it's not like any body that we're specifically trying to leave out. I'm just trying to make it honest and fair, that what's the natural baseline in the county of Charleston that they use in other communities, I guess is what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't know jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but I know nationwide, 100 and 120 are used, and that, it's just y'all's discretion.
Okay, well, I would like to recommend we open to all city employees who are full-time, increase the amount available and the individual amount they can request. And what's the consensus on 100 versus 120% area median income?
You're talking two people.
Yeah. I know. All
Well,
right,
then how are they gonna make the decision?
120 then.
Yeah, I mean,
If we're gonna do
Wait,
it
you say
120.
if you're gonna do it, I would do it at 120 if it's two
120.
people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we largely agree on that, so
Yay.
motion to approve.
Well, recap it for us, so we're
Okay, so
saying
in-
120?
Increasing the amount available per person for the stipend, increasing the total amount so that that doesn't take any places away, but then also increasing it to all of city staff, including public works
Full-time.
and administrative staff. Only full-time, yes, and in a way meaningfully that it's, so there's not competition between, administrative staff and, public safety. Does that sound like?
120%.
And 120% is the salary cap for people who qualify.
Right.
Yep.
You're good?
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
Do we need to vote? I mean, we voted last time.
You voted last time, this is just amending what you
Okay.
voted on last
We don't
time.
need to vote to them. We'll send it back to them.
Yeah, this is our recommendation to them. Let's vote, let's
vote.
keep
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Let's just vote.
Can we vote not talking anything, hold on, maybe that's
All
fine.
right, let's do, Mr. McDade,
What's one more thing?
Ms. Capella,
Yes.
Mr. Norton,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
I have one question. When it gets down here to where some of these people are making $9,000, $8,000, $4,000,
those are
They're
part-time.
part-time,
so all of that is part-time.
all of them, yeah,
Mhm.
except the mayor.
Except for the mayor race.
It is technically part-time, I suppose.
Yeah, if you look at this chart and you look from the bottom where there's just numbers, 3,000, 4,000, 9, and you go up to where there's a range, 45,999 to 42,000, that's where full-time starts, above that.
They aren't there.
Right.
Gotcha.
Jenna, I just realized that the quantity, so if we're looking at the
Yeah.
part-time positions, it's actually, I was just looking,
There's
I was
a lot.
counting, it's actually like 25, right? If I'm adding all the ones, the eights, the six, the two, that's how many, so there's 8 part-time beach patrol officers, all right? So it's actually, that does narrow the pool and make it, yeah, it makes it.
More available.
Yes, more available,
Yeah.
okay. And we went back to discussing in the middle of
So
our vote.
anyway, my vote is yes.
Okay? Ms. Ray,
Yes.
Ms. McNabb,
Yes.
and Ms. Stubblefield.
Yes.
Motion
So,
passes.
last thing, I swear, is we talked about and then forgot to discuss parking.
Yeah, and I
Or-
asked Jenna about that quickly before we
Okay.
started, but Jenna will explain it better than I can.
So I talked around to see what, if anything, the city could do to help with parking for workers, and short of buying a parking lot or leasing one, we don't see a way to help, provide parking for people who work, other than what we do for city, but for outside, for food and beverage
What
workers, for
about,
anybody else.
like, residents that get the stickers for their car?
We don't do that anymore,
Oh,
that
you
stopped
don't?
this year.
Okay.
DOT wouldn't let us choose
Oh,
one group.
DOT said no?
That was a DOT requirement, those are not allowed anymore because we're choosing one group of people over the other.
Okay,
So
so
those don't
do you
exist.
think that makes it to where we really just don't have an option? Well, never mind then.
Okay, good.
I thought about that this afternoon, I was like, oh, wait. Yeah.
And then so your recommendation from last month was also about lease to locals. So
Yes.
I'm gonna include that. If there's any discussion or change, let me know about that.
Stays the same for me, for sure.
I'll
Yeah.
include that and then this new about the tweaks about the stipend, and do a report for council. So they have their strategic planning meeting next week. So this will be helpful to them to start the discussions about budgeting, but they'll also have this in front of them at the next council meeting.
Did we determine if the A tax, I know we keep talking about this, but can it be used for lease to locals or not?
I don't know. I have to look.
There's
at
some
it.
mixed reviews, and I'd like to kind of know for sure, because that changes the mindset a little bit sometimes on how you view the push for it.
So, because that ordinance is new, or that state law is new, allowing ATAX to go to this at all, that's why there is some question. So I don't know the answer to that, and I'd have to find out. But that's also a council decision. I mean, if they choose to do this, they will find the money.
Well,
wherever they
certainly.
may- Because you're not limited to that.
Right.
There are other pots of money.
Well, you'd
I think
need
it helps make
not
the
be limited to
decision a
that,
little easier to
but
adopt if you already know there's a resource that you could look at, I guess.
I motion to adjourn.
I do just, we still have lots more long-term rental discussion to have and proposals, because we missed,
Sure is.
I guess, Mr. Logan.
So the discussion, yeah, let me
We're-
say real quick,
I'm gonna-
so the discussion for next month will be about the ADUs. And so I know there are a couple of different ideas of how to allow, if you wanted to, how to allow ADUs. Would it be in certain districts? Would it be for a certain number that are given a trial run? Would it be for just new construction? Those are still, what you would recommend to council would still be big picture, and the details don't have to be worked out here, because if any ordinance comes from council, it's gonna come back here anyway. And so I think you can make a more general recommendation about if you would like to allow ADUs in some form or not, and that can be your recommendation. And so for next month, we can discuss that more, the ADU question. We also have an application for a rezoning. There's a piece of property here on the west side, first block, that would like to change from residential two-family to island commercial. And so that would be on your agendas for the March agenda too.
Is that empty lot? No,
Yeah,
next to it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
really?
Really? I was assuming that was coming back up.
Yeah.
Jenna, just on the long-term initiative, the affordable housing initiative, we're breaking up little pieces and say, let's try to keep things moving forward. So like, here's so far what we've done, but we're not saying like, here's our final recommendation. We're nowhere close to saying, we're done with that topic,
Don't say
right?
nowhere close.
Well, sorry,
I think-
I mean,
I think
it's
that
not next
the
meeting or anything,
I think the
right?
ADU is your outstanding issue that y'all wanna come to some kind of agreement about how to recommend that, and so I
We
think
haven't
you
really talked about incentives, like for property owners, or, I feel like there's some more, but if we're adjourning, we can.
I think we're.
We can talk about that later. I wanna make sure, because I'm the one who's been trying to adjourn for a little while. My brain. That was a lot.
Great meeting.
Great meeting. Thanks for all the engagement.
I didn't leave, so we do that. I gotta go decorate Aaron's office. It's his birthday.
Here's the birthday. Thank you, Jenna. No, we were listening. Thank you. All right. Bye, Amy. I knew this was late.
actually wasn't as long as the.
It's not already another seawall next to it, and they don't have to
But thanks for all you did.
And even if there's not, there's still have to go over the problems that are happening.
When I saw the back.
Watch out.
Of course I did.
That one has to be